I did want to talk a little bit about cultural safety in terms of a Tongan, a Samoan, a Tokelau, a Niuean being quite different amongst all of us. But we do know there's some commonalities between us. For example, I've got a grid that says that pronouncing our names or places or welcomes or greetings is a really important place of safety for Pacific. In that same grid, it says that commonly, we like you to respect not only our view of Aotearoa New Zealand as a Pacific person, but also we bring some of what happens in our island places of residence. In that same grid, it talks about our spirituality. That's something that's common amongst us, albeit a little bit different these days. We'll see our Christian beliefs, if you like, just stretched a little bit. We've got Sonny Bill Williams and his belief in his Muslim journey. We've got a Baha'i temple in Samoa. We've got Hare Krishna people. I mean, it's diversified. We're not worshipping like we used to in just in churches. We're in cafes now. And some people are in pubs that are not being used. Years ago, we weren't participating in sport on a Sunday. Today, we'll do most sports on any given Sunday for any amount of money. So some of those changes are different amongst us, but they are common in that we have a spiritual belief. Another thing that's in that grid is the priority we have in cultural obligation. It might be in remittances, sending money to the islands. It might be in how we have weddings and 21st, and we are expected to commit financially to those things. That's common in all of the island groups. So why am I mentioning this? Because most of these things sit behind the learner that sits in our class. Most of these things sits behind these people who they look like they come from backgrounds that are, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's a Palangi word. We're all quite different in the different island groups. When you often hear of Pacific people being bunched together, but we actually are quite different. So to respect that difference in the classroom, I guess is what I'm saying, is really important, even though we might have some of those common things that I've just mentioned.
Are Pacific people open to talking about this? Like if I'm a tutor and these are my learners and I want to ask some questions about it just to kind of build my own knowledge, as part of that socialization aspect, are these comfortable things for people to talk about, like to talk about the difference between how they do something perhaps from a Samoan background and then looking at that in comparison to say what a Tongan would do in the same situation? Are those okay to talk about?
They are okay, and it depends on the activity that you use for that to be okay with. For example, if I'm working with a group of mixed groups around the classroom, I would probably group them into groups and give them paper and say, here, I'm going to tell you my story as a non-Pacific Island person, and this is how we view the world. I'm going to give you 5 minutes in your little groups to write down some, get them to talk about that and then feed it back to the wider group. So there's a bit of safety in the process and how you facilitate that talanoa or that conversation. And once you've got that part done, you'll find that you just have to then prompt safely. They might say, in my family, for example, my parents run our money. Okay. And then you might prompt them and say, is that something that you're happy with? And then, you'll find that they'll start to respond that way. Yeah, it's a heart response if it's money. Keeping the end in mind, of course, it's also about the content of your classroom. If you're talking about maths, physics, and chemistry, that's fine because it's not, if you like, heart related. When you're talking about finance or abuse or family stuff, then that's more heart related. So yeah, you do as a tutor have to just modify or adapt your methodology to get that talanoa going. But in the main, it's mainly safe as long as you can have that right approach, I think.
Look, I really appreciate you being able to draw together some of the threads of our last conversations. We started with this kind of overview of what Pacific cultural centeredness is, and then we moved from there to talanoa and to lewa, and more recently the whanawhale. And it kind of feels like this conversation is a great place to kind of bring all those things together, really hoping that people can think about their classroom environments perhaps a bit more carefully, and really look for these opportunities to, discuss and understand what's going on.